More and WNST is here. He's running for Baltimore County Executive in my homeland, hence the Dundalk shirt. And, you know, the first thing I want to say to you is that the politics of running for anything, and when I run for mayor, I know it's going to be different, but just how divisive it can be. Mm-hmm. And I know Al, I know you, I've known both of you for the better part of 2 decades at least. And anytime I think you get in the middle, you hear it on both sides. Why is politics so polarizing at this point in that way, even in our county?
Yeah, I think it's because people stopped having conversations, and we lost the ability to disagree while being disagreeable. Well, we're not disagreeing, But look, one of the things I was most proud of during my time in the legislature was I chaired the Baltimore County House delegation. It was a 21-member delegation split almost evenly between Republicans and Democrats. And the 4 years in a row I was elected chairman, we had to have a vote every year. I was elected unanimously. And it wasn't because I agreed with everybody on everything. It was on every issue, we always started with the principle of trying to reach across the aisle to find a bipartisan solution. And if we didn't agree, we weren't disagreeable, because on the next issue we should pick back up and try to find that. And I think our election systems, people who run for office sort of lose sight of the fact that people want and expect, honestly, I think leaders, regardless of party affiliation, to be able to reach across the aisle to get things done.
Where is the middle on all of the? I mean, it feels like there's no middle on so many issues that finding the middle is offensive to whichever side you're on. That the middle is what we're all trying to find, where we can't find.
You know, I think you'll find that most voters on most issues are somewhere in the middle, and I think that, you know, we might not find it might not be the perfect middle, but it might be the 30 to the 30 or the 40 to the 40. But,
a football field, that's an interesting
I thought you could appreciate.
Yeah. We're trying to find the middle of the field somewhere.
But I think if we take a step back and we ask the questions of what are we actually trying to accomplish here, and think about
a happy community. How about that?
There you go.
Thriving, happy, working, fruitful, prosperous community.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Well, that's a good place to start. But then, I'm just saying, but even on particular issues, if we take a step back and say, what are we fundamentally trying to accomplish here, instead of assuming there's just 2 ways, sometimes there's a third or a fourth way that maybe we couldn't agree on, the first approach or the second approach, but we can agree on other opportunities. So
I put something up on Facebook, and I said I was going to be speaking to local politicians. And I said, what would be one issue in one word? So it was one word was all you were allowed. So let me go through the list. You ready for this?
Sure.
All right? Because we're going to take on all of these in 60 minutes or less. Integrity, culture, crime, economy, the middle class, democracy, empathy, constitution, respect, viability and jobs, education, healthcare, taxes, teachers, budgets, honesty, roads, cannabis. Surprised that's not further up. Racism. Surprised that's not further up. Murder. Surprised that's not further up. Violence, gangs, opportunity, illegals, parenting, safety, human rights, police, EMT, first responders, accountability, transparency, bipartisanship.
Well, we got one
and
covered.
Last, which should be first, corruption. So I'll start with last and first, corruption. Honesty and integrity.
Yep.
Like in every relationship I've ever been involved in, with any girl on a date, friend in business, someone I would want to drive to a concert or a ball game with, the honesty part has to be fundamental for me in any relationship. That if I feel like you're lying to me, and Lord knows over 27 years on the radio, I have a track record with this, I got a BS sniffer. I think that's the Dundalk thing that we're talking about. The honesty part. And I think with honesty in government has to come transparency and oversight to some degree. It has to be transparent to be honest. Otherwise, it's perceived as being dishonest.
Yep.
Right?
I would say, especially in Baltimore County, residents are looking for leaders who will bring an honesty and a transparency and a connectedness back to our governing. A lot of people, as I've traveled around the county, feel like a lot of decisions have been made without that full transparency. And even if it's not dishonest, not being able to see the full picture leaves one questioning whether or not that's the case, right? So,
give me an example of something like that where I've often thought about our national government. There are many things they can't tell you, and Dutch would probably be on board for this. For your own safety, the NSA functions down the street. I got friends that work there.
Yeah.
No, people come in, they come out. They can't say things, but I think that unto itself leads to
Well, let's make it a little more basic. I mean, there was a Starbucks on York Road that a community, there was a waiver request to change the zoning, and the county waived it without even engaging the community, and so they have this Starbucks that replaced a bank, which is a whole different set of traffic issues and foot traffic and road traffic, and it's an openness and a connectedness approach.
So the community's heard.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, and look, I mean, it's everything from using technology to make sure that people, everything from a variance to a PUD request to a school boundary change, people should be able to not only be proactively informed about what's happening, but actually be given meaningful opportunities to participate. The last 2 years we've had budgets in Baltimore County. There hasn't been one, there's only been two people who've testified on over $6 billion of spending. We don't do budget hearings before the budget's produced. We do budget hearings afterwards. And so how can, if I'm county executive, how can my budgets reflect the priorities of the community if I'm not even listening to the community on the front end? But the other thing I'd say about, honesty and integrity and transparency is leaders have to embody that. And there was a story just today, and look, I'm just reporting what was out there in the Sun paper. My opponent in this race spent the equivalent of almost 3 months on the taxpayers' time the past half a year campaigning as insurance commissioner. So, if you're talking about transparency and accountability, you have to be willing to lead by example, and that just hasn't been the case as we found out today.
Well, I'd say at what cost, is the transparency when someone's going to vote RD no matter what? And I think that's where we are in a tribal, I don't want to call it semi-religious, but almost it feels like that sort of zeal for whatever team, red or blue, they're playing on. I have seen this. It exasperates me, when there are gotcha moments and there are gray areas which you may or may not be talking about in regard to your opponent at this point, right? And I'll be talking to him next week as well, and I'm sure it'll go back and forth because it always does. I'm just saying obvious things that are lies will not get you voted out at this point. So it's more about catering to your team to some degree. And as a taxpayer, I find that to be difficult for me because I'm not going to believe in every one of your issues or every one of Al's issues or every one of, in the state, whether it's Ben Jealous or whether it's Larry Hogan, trying to find more I have with you than I have on the other side.
I wish more people took that approach, though, because there are people who will, without questioning, just go to one side or the other. You can look at our social media account, and some of the comments are just like, vote D or vote R, and that's it. And, look, I think that there are differences between the parties.
But I think it's hard to have a difference in the party, right? That if you disagree with the Democratic mission in any way in this conversation, just a little variance that may be a little far right, because I have issues I'm left of Bernie Sanders on. I have issues I'm right of Donald Trump on.
Sure.
Like squeegee kids in the city, as a guy who lives in the city. That's an issue for me to take on that would not make me popular on the Democratic ballot.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to me because I live here.
Well, look, I'm a Democrat, but I grew up in Dundalk too, right? So I know that people work hard for their money, and so that's why, especially on issues of taxes and fees, I have been out of step. I have not been a party line Democrat when it comes to taxes or fees.
In what way? So I'm not familiar with this, and maybe my audience isn't either. By the way, Johnny O's here. We're talking about life there. Anyway.
So I voted against the alcohol tax. I voted against the sales tax increase. I voted against the toll, or I pushed against the toll. So sales tax, alcohol tax, toll increases, and then I voted to lower income taxes.
So the perception there is you're voting with Larry's side. That you're voting on the other side, or is that?
I don't care what so here's the thing, right? Like, I don't care what the perception is. I care about fighting for the results. And that's sort of the same thing about the bipartisanship is, if I'm lucky enough to be county executive, I'm going to work with Larry Hogan if he's reelected governor, or I'll work with Jealous if he's elected governor. It doesn't, at the end of the day, we have to be able to put aside those partisanship, and the labels to get things done while we're governing. I get that there are choices in elections and people sort of line up more or less on one side or the other, but what's missing in governing is that people can't set those aside once elections are over to actually get things done. We need more people who can do that in government.
Give me the 5 things on a platform basis for you, because I haven't been tearing your website up or Al's website. I know you both. I see stuff. Stuff makes me a little squeamish when I hear people saying bad things about either one of you, quite frankly. But your platform, what are the things fundamentally that are 5 most important things for Baltimore County as you see it after this election you win, what's your platform?
So I'd say that we actually have specifics about all these on our website, which is a big difference in this race. We've actually talked about having a plan beforehand versus afterwards. But I would say first and foremost, education. And I'd love to talk more about that because it's a passion and it's a priority.
My high school is awesome.
Jobs and economic development, public safety. Transforming the integrity and the transparency, having government that's responsive, so a reform agenda for government, and the environment, I'd say, are the top 5 issues that we're trying to tackle here in our campaign.
Let's talk about crime, because living in the city, I know that's a huge issue for me, and when I run for mayor, I promise I'll be loud about it. The county and the city, and even the state, when you have Republican, Democrat, this side, that side, pushing back, the crime thing's obvious to everyone, but I don't think what's obvious is how important the city is, where I hear people in the county say, and this is where the sports comes in, I'm not coming to a ball game. I don't want to come downtown for a game, for dinner, and that affects my clients, my city, our tax base. I am worried about what happens in the city versus what happens in the county, and that they are lockstep. A weak city, a bad city can't make a good county for me.
Yep.
They both are lockstep to me. You can't have one be great without the other one being in order.
Absolutely, and I think that's another difference in this campaign is that I believe, like you do, that if the city isn't strong, the county won't be strong. If there are concerns about crime or economic development or transportation, and if those things aren't running on time, if those things aren't moving ahead, the county's going to feel the impact. And so as executive, I'll build on the relationships I have with some of the city leadership, but also bring that regional approach to say, look, public safety doesn't stop at the city-county line. Economic development shouldn't stop at the city-county line. Transportation, getting our people around, shouldn't stop at the city-county line. We should invest in arts and culture and sports and athletics because people in Baltimore County benefit from and enjoy those amenities that the city has, and so we have to have some sort of partnership because if we turn our heads, if we put our heads in the sand and the city has more crime, has fewer jobs, has a declining tax base, that's going to have implications for people who live 20, 30 miles away. And so we have to be a partner, and that's what I'm poised to do and ready to do.
Let's talk about education a little bit. I was blown away by what Dundalk High used to be, and I went back over there last year and saw the hallowed halls and all that. Big stories about air conditioning in schools. I'm not a parent at that level. My son is a Baltimore County graduate, Perry Hall. He went to the hall, Perry Hall. But I know it affects everybody. I see it on Facebook. I mean, I'm connected to lots of people who have kids in this and air conditioning in schools that have certain amenities, which my school now, quite frankly, looks like the best college campus I never went to. But other schools haven't had that happen yet.
That's right.
Talk issue to issue around how many high schools do you have in the county now? 30-ish?
High schools, about 30, yeah. 30. There are over 300 total schools across the county at this point.
All the way through elementary schools. So for your initiatives in education, how will things get different, better, or change with you?
Well, first of all, I'd be the first person who actually was a public school teacher in Baltimore County to be elected county executive. I'm supported by, endorsed by the teachers of Baltimore County because we have a plan that will both invest in our school infrastructure because every kid deserves the kind of facilities that Dundalk Solars has.
The great education I had in Baltimore County.
That's right.
Turned out this well.
But I mean, to your point, I mean, it took a lot of fighting to give Dundalk High School what it deserved.
And it took a long time, right? Literally,
yes,
years and years.
And there are other schools that are lacking in those facility areas, and we have issues with overcrowding that are on the horizon, and we don't have a plan to address all those things. So we need to get to the work of addressing the infrastructure so that we don't have schools like Delaney High School that have brown drinking water, bursting pipes. Lansdowne High School is literally sinking into the ground. Patapsco High School was closed the first day of school. I was trying to tour it, but the air conditioning wasn't finished yet.
I'd make a joke about that, but it wouldn't be nice because I'm Dundalk. Sorry, Dundalk Patapsco thing. They understand.
So, it's also the people, and so we have a plan talking about redirecting our spending. So we've allowed mid-level and high-level administration dollars. To the growth in those budgets have been over 40% the last 5 years.
How does that decision get made? Educate me on this. So Brownwater and Delaney, Lansdowne, two clearly different sides of the county, two different economic. But who gets the fight to say we get the next school, or that how Dundalk got done. I'm not even familiar with it. I just went and toured it.
So
I know somebody's fighting to get this done for it and against it, quite frankly.
Yeah,
right?
so technically the superintendent in consultation with the school board are the ones who are setting the budget, but ultimately that budget is funded by the county executive and approved by the county council. So there is a partnership, there's a conversation to be had where the county executive and the people they represent and work with the school board to say, here are the priorities, here's how we're going to move forward in getting these things done. What's happened, unfortunately, is we haven't prioritized by need. We've allowed sort of politics to enter into the conversation, and so we really need a plan to address not just the immediate pressing needs at schools like Lansdowne and Delaney and Towson High School, but we need to have a plan for all of our overcrowded schools. Perry Hall, in the southeast, you've got schools like Sparrows Point needs a new middle school. I mean, the needs are incredible, but we don't have a fair.
Well, the county went through a lot in the 50s and 60s and 70s to build these, right? Mm-hmm. Then there was a long period where we weren't building a lot of schools here, right?
We've kicked the can down the road, though, in terms of maintenance. We've kicked the can down the road in terms of building new schools. And so we have to – look, here's the way I look at it. If we don't make the investments and if we don't actually have learning conditions that are good for our children, we're going to lose the tax base. We're already seeing that in parts of the county. And Howard County – their median home value is $200,000 more than Baltimore County. And fundamentally, the biggest difference between Baltimore County and Howard County.
A parent says, where do I want to put my kid in school?
Where am I? Absolutely. Hands down. That is the big difference.
I went through that. I was in Dundalk, and my son was going to middle school, and I had to make a decision, being in Dundalk, whether he was going to go to the Hollabird route, which wasn't my favorite part of my life for sure. And I moved to Perry Hall for prosperity in the late 90s so my son could go to a better school. But we almost moved to Ridgely. We almost moved to Delaney. My son might have gone to Towson, might have gone to Perry. And that's a decision I had to make when he was in 5th grade, right?
Yeah, and
so I went through that once in my life where it was – if I live in the city, where's my child going to go to school? Because I was one of those guys that wasn't going to send my kid to school in the city. I've lived in the city for 15 years. Someday I might run the city, but that's another story altogether.
So, good leaders apply the parent test, right? So I'll be sending my daughter to public schools if I'm county executive. And I need to be able, as county executive, to walk into every single school and say, okay, is this a classroom I'd send my child to? Is this a classroom I'd send my child to? Every
classroom.
Every single one. And I can't.
Not just me saying, well, I want to live in Delaney or I want to live in Perry Hall or I don't want to live. No offense, Patapsco, but come on, I'm just kidding around.
I'm proud. I'm
a Dundalk guy.
I still live in Dundalk, for the record.
I still own a place in Dundalk, for the record, just so you know, Bank Street.
But to apply that test, that would transform, I think, the way we approach our schools. And for far too long, we've allowed an inequity between our school systems where parents who can get their kids out of the less desirable schools move to other parts of the county or move to Howard County or Harford County. And we're going to see a downward trend if we don't make the investments to sort of shore up our educational system across the county.
Johnny O's here. We're going to step out, take a break. I'm Nestor. We are indeed talking politics because we live here, and I own a business in Baltimore County. I like Johnny O. I like his opponent. We'll be talking to him next week as well. Long format here out on Facebook Live as well as YouTube Live. Great for the local folks to sit down and talk about some things. We'll be back to talk, let's see here, healthcare, taxes, roads, murders, violence, opportunity, parenting, safety, all of that next. Stay with us. I'm Nestor. He's Johnny O. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.